So a few months ago when I first reviewed the Trevoce 12, I said it was okay, but it really could use some DSP.
Hopefully in the next iteration, they'll do something like that. So OSD, if you're listening, that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see something like this with some DSP built in. That would be awesome.
A few months later, here we are. I'm reviewing the Trevoce 8, 10, and 12, and now with DSP. Congratulations, OSD, for listening. They also have a special. If you use the code JoeAndTell20, you get $200 off. So the Trevoce 12 goes from $6.99 down to $4.99. The Trevoce 10 from $5.99 to $3.99. And the Trevoce 8 from $4.99 to $2.99. This is Joe and Tell. If you're new to the channel, I review home theater, home audio, personal audio, and tech. If after watching this you decide you like the content, consider subscribing. If not, leave a nasty comment and a thumbs down. So what's the big deal with DSP? So that stands for digital signal processing. What's so useful about it? Well, first of all, it allows you to get the most out of a speaker, especially in a subwoofer. It's very important. So a lot of you will be connecting this to an AVR, an audio video receiver, which has its own kind of room correction, which is a form of DSP. But the problem is that's not the DSP that you need when you're using subwoofers and you're trying to get the most bass extension out of them. What it's meant to do is to really flatten out the response. But what I noticed with the Trevoce 12 is that it was capable of hitting lower frequencies, but I wasn't able to tweak it enough in Odyssey, which is on the Denon that I was using. I wasn't able to use that to get it down to the frequencies where I wanted it to be. So what I had to do was I had to use an external DSP. Now you actually have internal DSP on the Trevoce 12, 10, and 8. So to get a little bit more into that, what we really want from a subwoofer is we want it to have a flat frequency response. And so we want that to be able to cross over to your main speakers. And so if it's very peaky, then it's very difficult for that to happen. If you have a subwoofer that's flat and you have a speaker that's flat, it's pretty easy to cross them over and blend them together. So this is also helpful if you have a 2-channel system. Some of them may have a subwoofer output, but a lot of them don't have an active crossover that many home theater receivers already come with. Having the DSP built in directly to the subwoofer solves all of those issues. Also, the room has such a big effect on how the subwoofer sounds. You're going to need to be able to change some of those settings using what they call a parametric EQ, which is different from a graphic equalizer. It's superior, and so you're going to be able to do that with a DSP on the subwoofer. My initial issue with the Trevoce 12 was, although it had high SPL, it was very peaky. So, I would prefer a subwoofer with a flat response because of what I said earlier. It makes it easier to blend. And so the Trevoce 12 had extremely high SPLs at certain frequencies, but I wanted to really flatten that out and kind of distribute that in a different way. So one analogy would be for you car guys out there, imagine an engine where it had no gears. And so, it might be optimized. You might be able to get an extremely crazy top speed, but it would take forever to get there. So the lower frequencies would be equivalent to being able to use lower gears. So you're shifting the power down to lower frequencies and kind of maximizing the use of those different frequencies. This review is a little bit tough because I actually had 3 subwoofers to review, the 8-inch, the 10-inch, and the 12-inch. So all of these are using a treated paper woofer, which I enjoy. I like the sound of those types of woofers. If they are done properly, you'll get a very stiff cone, but still lightweight, which lends itself to a punchy and fast bass response. These all look like sealed enclosures, but if you look at the side, you'll find 2 passive radiators, one on each side. They all have a faux leather wrap, which is very interesting, something different that I haven't seen on other subwoofers. Where they differ is obviously in the size of the enclosures and the size of the woofers themselves. In addition, you'll find differences in the power amplifiers. The Trevoce 8 is rated at 300 watts, the Trevoce 10 is rated at 500 watts, and the Trevoce 12 is rated at 800 watts. And although you'll find some of the same controls on the back, with all of them you'll see controls for volume, frequency, phase, ability to set the woofer from off, auto on, and on, as well as the ability to turn the DSP on and off. As far as connections, they all have RCA low-level inputs, but when you move up to the Trevoce 10, you'll find a high-level speaker-level input, and when you move up to the Trevoce 12, you'll notice that this one has the additional LFE RCA input. Let's move on to how they sound. The 8-inch model, as you can imagine, is much smaller than the others, and you get some pretty decent bass. you can't expect it to go down to 20 hertz. It's just a small woofer, small enclosure. And so I was able to tweak it down to maybe around 28 hertz. You could push it a little bit further, but then you start getting into levels where if you turn it up high, you will notice some distortion. So this is meant maybe for something where you're going to use it near a computer, add some bass to your computer speakers, or in a small bedroom like I'm using it for myself. Now the 10-inch definitely has some more output. You're able to play it louder and it gets deeper. I was able to tune the 10-inch down to 25 hertz comfortably. You could, again, tune it lower if you wanted to, but I found 25 hertz was kind of the sweet spot. Now when it comes to the Trevoce 12, I was able to tune that one down to 20 hertz, which is really where I would recommend most people start if you're looking for a home theater setup. And so that was my problem with the original one. It wasn't able to get down to 20 hertz. Now it can. And so when you plug this into your AVR, it detects it as a subwoofer that can play down to 20 hertz and adjust its settings accordingly. Now, one thing to keep in mind, these are pretty small subwoofers. And so you can't expect these to perform equal to some of the bigger subwoofers that are ported. That's one of the sacrifices you make. But if you do want a small compact sub, then this may be something you might want to look at. If you are into 2-channel music, if you're mostly listening to music, I think that these would be great, especially because a lot of the music doesn't have extremely low frequencies anyway. I would highly recommend it for someone using a sub for that application, and if you don't want to spend a ton of money. The other good thing about these is, in addition to their small size, they have the benefits of a sealed and a ported subwoofer. So ported subwoofers give you more extension, and you do get that with tuned passive radiators. With a sealed enclosure, what you get is you get a tighter bass response, and you don't get chuffing, and a smaller enclosure. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. I just want to reiterate, when you have a smaller enclosure, you do sacrifice bass extension, and we're making up for that using DSP, and that's why it's so important. There is an app that you use to tune the DSP. It's called iWoofer, and it's for Android and iOS, although the iOS one is the only one that allows you to do the auto room EQ, which is, I think, worth it. If you have an old iPhone or old iPad, that will work. It's just that they have to use that one because they know which mics are in those devices, versus Android, there's all kinds of different hardware, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I find that it's something that you might be able to use to kind of calibrate it for your room. So if you don't have a UMic 1 and REW software, you can use this app, and I think it does a pretty decent job. I think you can get better results if you were to use REW and use your own microphone, but if this is all you have, I think that it's much better than not having DSP at all. The iWoofer app does need a little bit of refinement. I found that it's a little bit hard to understand if you don't know what you're doing, but there are videos out there to show you how to utilize this app. Overall, I would say for the price, especially with the discount that I offered at the beginning, I think that these are very capable subwoofers. You just have to understand what the capabilities are, what the limitations are, and your use case. So for movies, if you want the biggest, loudest, deepest subwoofers, you're gonna have to go with a bigger subwoofer with more power, maybe something of 15 or 18 or 24, some of these guys out there. But if you're looking for a small compact sub that has some good bass extension with some nice features and DSP at a very reasonable price, well, you might want to take a look at the Trevoce 12, 10, and 8. So that's my review of the Trevoce. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos, and become a patron if you're interested in buying some of the stuff that I have. I just have way too much stuff, and I put it all on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Joe and Tell. Anyway, that's it. Take care. Bye-bye.